Okay, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. We went out to Infinity Ward. We talked about multiplayer last week, everything we're excited about there. This week, we saved one multiplayer mode to talk about, which is Ground War, which was at the multiplayer event. We got to play on a different map. The code name was Downtown for this map. It's kind of like an Eastern European map.
It's a great name for it since it is downtown.
It is, in fact, downtown. Dan, what is Ground War?
Oh, boy. So, you know, I'm not a Battlefield guy, but I'm told this is very similar to a Battlefield mode. This is it's a 5-cap domination, essentially, on a giant scale.
Yeah.
Where you can spawn into any of your controlled areas. So spawn points can be any of those capped zones you have, or even player-controlled APCs that are driving across the map while you jump into them. So basically, it's just like a big domination match if you want to think about it in those terms. We played 32 versus 32. We've heard that the mode will go much higher.
They say 60 plus. We'll see.
I think outside of what they told us, other sites have confirmed 100. I'm not sure if that's true
Wow,
or not.
really?
I just heard it secondhand. So
Okay.
But I'm saying, like, it's a big mode with lots of people in it.
And it's interesting. They even compared it to earlier Battlefield games, which is very fun. But at the same time, there's no squads.
No squads,
which is a growing mechanic.
and
so that's
no
probably
like
the earlier
right.
aspect.
So no like weird classes or anything. You can't play like a support medic or anything like that. Anything you take in is from your own loadouts from multiplayer. So all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, the applications are different because it's a large-scale battle. So you're going to want to take stuff like smoke grenades and other stuff you might not bring into, you know, your typical team deathmatch where you're just trying to kill people.
Yeah.
Since it is objective-based and there's lots of wide open road where you definitely want to use that smoke to obscure your movement toward like big points like the bank or this one point that's like locked between two skyscrapers and you can't see in there.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff like that. It's big. It's huge. The map is gigantic.
It's so strange to me that the messaging around this mode was like, oh, we wanted to take a lot of like, kind of that zeitgeist of battle royales and turn it into a Call of Duty mode. That's the way they framed it repeatedly, and it's that confusing.
Really? I don't recall that.
They absolutely did. When talking about like, okay, clearing the space, a lot of designers are like, okay, we got to run from this to this. There's no cover there, and it's like, well, have you played battle royales? That's how it works, right?
And there are lots of cover spaces, but that whole open road thing, that's a way different from a standard map. Like, you walk out in that middle of the road, you're dead. You're just gonna die. You got to think about the cars on the side.
A lot of people on rooftops.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's an interesting mode. It's just that weird no man's land in my mind of like a little bit more like Battlefield, has some elements that feel like a battle royale, but it's not a battle royale. Like, who is this for within the Call of Duty audience here?
I think what they're really going for is just create the, you know how battle royales have those stories you tell.
Right.
This mode seems really designed to take advantage of that. Like, even in just the games we played,
It's less structured.
We had like a giant bank assault, and like, you know, I saw that happen, but it was in the distance. Like, I saw like 5 guys trying to defend against a juggernaut at the bank, and that was, you know, that those kind of moments are going to happen all the time. And they're like, wow, remember when I got the juggernaut and just took the game? And that's fun stuff, you know. While I was skirmishing behind some buildings.
Yeah.
With the snapshot grenade.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, you know, a fair amount of vehicles going around. It's,
there are. I didn't get in one, but the choppers are also player controlled.
Yep.
I saw one and I was like, maybe I shouldn't grab that. I got to go back to the point.
I did, just to find out that it does control, thank God, the same way as like Black Ops chopper, stuff like that.
I saw a chopper just get blown to pieces, and it was amazing.
Nice.
I bet that's the norm. And yeah, the map size and scale is just enormous, and there's so many people. Like, it does feel, again, you know, people always say Call of Duty is the same. This is very different, much like the night mode and realism mode we played. I don't recall ever having this experience in a Call of Duty game ever.
Yeah.
They've had things labeled ground war before, but they were much smaller scale.
Yes. And the odd bit is I love Blackout last year from Black Ops 4.
You and me both.
Yes, thank you. Asking about Battle Royale this time around, it's an odd message. Because even
think it was odd at all.
Well, the multiplayer event is very much, we're focusing on core multiplayer. Even this, though, it's like, well, clearly they have the tech for this. It seems so close. And in the rapid fire with Joel Emsley, the studio art director, you can see his reaction when I ask about a Battle Royale, and it's, we're focused on this right now.
Well,
which, by the way, that was a very good video, Ben.
Oh, did you watch it?
I did.
Thank you. What stood out from watching the edited version?
Oh, man.
I mean, I'm sorry, these are barely edited at all, but what stood out watching the edited version?
I really like the way that you edited down the responses to be so snappy. Very good. We've never done that before.
Interesting. Anyways.
See, I mean, if they were working on one, they certainly have the structure in place now with all the testing they've done in this another mode that has tons and tons of people all doing the same, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I want them to be working on one. They weren't confirming one, but there's a little little zest in their step when asked about a battle royale. Is that a phrase?
No.
There's a little bit of like,
If there is one, they're not ready to talk about it now.
I pray to God there is one. I really hope there is one, Dan. Absolutely.
Rather than continuing support for Blackout?
Look, that's Treyarch. They can keep continuing support. That's Raven.
This is a conundrum that we dealt with at the point. We're like, what happens when the next annual release comes out?
Yeah.
What if they have a battle royale?
I know.
I mean, at some point.
Also, they have the mobile version, which is also Call of Duty Battle Royale.
At some point, you gotta say, maybe we should just have a battle royale game, Call of Duty Battle Royale.
And maybe that's what this is going to be. Maybe this is
studios.
going to be bundled with it, and that'll be the new default, and they'll stop supporting Blackout. Because it is a crazy idea to, in theory, within 2 years, launch 3 Battle Royale Call of Duty games.
When you got 3 studios making games,
Right.
you can push.
But that's what I was confused about, is even asking them in that rapid fire, like, who's supporting this studio right now? Because I was expecting them to say Raven, since Raven had so much experience working on Blackout.
Well, they
did not cite Raven.
They pull from that whole pool of the.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call them secondary because they're just as important in the development of these games as the main teams. But they come up in every conversation. It's like, oh, who's supporting this? Oh, you got the list.
Yeah.
Yep.
Brian Shea, would you make a bet that Modern Warfare has a battle royale at some point?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't, yeah.
Safe bet.
I think there will be one. I just don't know if it's going to be bundled in, like you said, or
Right.
a part of actual Modern Warfare proper.
There's the question. Let's see. No zombies mode.
No zombies.
They say, hey, Modern Warfare's never had zombies. We're not going to do that. Another thing. We have Spec Ops for the multiplayer co-op aspect.
They didn't tell us a lot about that, but
No.
what we were able to discern is that it continues after the campaign.
Yeah.
And it's going to be basically the fleshed out multiplayer co-op experience.
Right.
I'm excited for that. I like
Yeah,
those.
it should be fun. 4-player squads. That's also like the downtown map we played for Ground War. That is also a Spec Ops location, apparently. There's going to be vehicles in Spec Ops. So
Yeah.
we have like a couple of rough details.
And
about
again,
that.
we talked about it a little last week, but the vehicular focus is super cool. And
Yeah.
with anti-vehicle weapons and all kinds of other things like that.
Yeah, for sure. The game's campaign. We got to see 3 missions, kind of jumping around from the campaign overall. It was the same stuff that I think talked about at E3, maybe a little bit more.
There was the stuff that was at E3 Judges Week, and there was the stuff at E3. And we got to see both and then sort of talk to the 2 lead
Taylor and
campaign
Jacob.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely right.
Yeah, which is very helpful to get to talk to them about
Absolutely.
exactly what they have in mind for this. Brian Shea, what was your take on that campaign?
It looks intense.
Intense is a good word.
Yeah, so their whole thing is like you have to go from place to place completing these missions, but all along the way you're going to have to identify who the threats are, and like the whole thing is like the rules of war have changed. So it's like there's no like your enemy may not be wearing a uniform, so you have to kind of keep your head on a swivel and like seeing who is not a threat and who is a threat. And if you accidentally like kill somebody who is who is not a threat, you're basically like just given a game over screen.
It's a fail state.
Well, they said that it would take they hinted that it would take multiple incidents of, you wouldn't be court-martialed.
You can't run and gun your way through this game.
Sure, and at least the missions we saw.
Correct.
Let's be very clear on that.
Yeah.
Because the one mission we saw, again, didn't look like any Call of Duty mission that I've ever done.
This is Piccadilly?
Piccadilly,
Or Hometown?
the townhouse. No, townhouse. So it's called Townhouse. It's an incursion mission, a nighttime assault on a terrorist safe house, and it was very tactical. Shooting through walls, identifying threats, zip ties on non-combatants to get them out of there. It was much more of like a Rainbow Six style like tactical incursion than a Call of Duty. Hide behind cover, gun, run. Hide behind cover, gun, run. Go down the corridors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have done stuff like that in the past, but not to this level.
Right. That's exactly right. So it was enough different to say that, like, yeah, they've played around with concepts like that, but it was intense,
I mean, there's like people sitting at the table,
Yeah.
arms like in the air, shoot them in the face. They're a threat. You got to move on. There's women in the house. There's babies crying.
There's a baby.
Shoot them.
Yeah.
Move on. Not the baby necessarily.
You don't shoot the
woman who
baby.
goes for a weapon. Stuff like that. It's
pretend
Yeah,
hostages.
the
Yeah.
woman like talks to the guys like take me hostage, and like you walk in the room and the guy's holding the woman like a human shield, and you kill the guy that's holding her, and she like falls to the ground. You're like, okay, that's it. And then no, she runs for a shotgun. You're like, oh, great,
Right.
I got to take her out now.
Yeah, it's intense is a good word for it. Extremely grisly. I would call it the unflinching eye of a combat scenario in that situation.
I got to the point where I was like, I don't know if I'm excited to play this campaign.
Wow.
Like, I'm a sensitive wimp when it comes to gore and game stuff like that, and I realized like this is beyond my level. Like I'm not going to play this.
Doesn't that like sort of entice you? Because games don't normally evoke that kind of emotion. At least not for me.
Absolutely, but it's not an experience I want to go through.
How did you handle no Russian?
I haven't played Modern Warfare 2.
What? Is it because of that? Like you heard about this and
no? Let's talk about it in the game club for the original Modern Warfare.
Yeah,
that's next week. Podcast at GameInformer.com. So it's like the entire idea is that there's a terrorist attack, Piccadilly in London, and you found out that it was planned in this house. So you're going into the house, and it's like the part that I love is they put a date on the screen, and it's October 20th, 2019. Like they're trying to make this as modern as you can be for a Modern Warfare game. Like literally, maybe the day that you're playing the game will be on the screen there.
I mean, yeah, that's something that consistently reinforced among the demos we did see. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. I would call it like, you know, some people are going to take the approach that like they're just trying to be edgy and trying to, you know, get people talking about it because it is so out there. But it's like sometimes I think sitting here in the Game Informer office, we take a lot for granted in terms of like what happens in scenarios like this, and it's as close as possibly replicating a situation that a real team might go into in that situation.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason they're not showing that footage. I do think there would be a public outcry. I don't know if I expect it to be another no Russian level, but I think when people start to see these missions from the game, I could see public at large being like, whoa, wait a minute. What are you doing?
Well, I asked them that. I was like, are you going to show this? And yeah, they're like, we want the context when the public sees this.
Because, you know, it was a good point that Taylor and Jacob emphasized over and over again is like, we're showing some real intense moments from the campaign here. Don't expect the entire campaign to be like this. There's going to be levity. I mean, you've played, you know, Infinite Warfare's campaign. There are some more human notes. Yeah, exactly. But there's some more human notes and levity in between these very intense, I would say, effed up sequences, right? And they just want to lead with this to show how different the campaign is this time around. Yeah,
they're genuinely horrifying. Like
yeah.
And again, for me, I don't necessarily consider that a bad thing because I like to feel something when I play a game. If that coincides with the story they're trying to tell. There's always the risk of saying, well, they're just getting gratuitous to be edgy and controversial and all that. But I think the team is in a position that can handle it with as much as you can. Stuff like this with some grace.
I love the idea that Activision's funding it, that they are taking a big swing like this. I think the feedback could be intense.
I think it will be. Yeah. There's no way it's not. Those were extremely graphic. They are brutal. Some people won't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a whole feature like what you can expect from the Call of Duty Modern Warfare campaign that you can find on GameInformer.com tomorrow. But I have this quote from Joel, the art director, who was like, you know, like I've seen the end of the game and it's unbelievable, but like it could have really gone bad if it wasn't handled with the care that these guys did. And I think that like normally I think people would be like, oh, Call of Duty can't say anything meaningful, but like the fact that they do have these Naughty Dog devs helping out with the narrative or actually leading the narrative, I think that gives it a little bit of credibility there.
It is a sweet thing to see, like especially there's a confusing saga behind the development of this game, right? Where it's so 3 leads in particular. We have Joel, the studio art director.
Jeff
Smith, who's the multiplayer design lead. Also, he worked on Junkyard Wars, one of the best TV shows of all time.
There you go.
It was very exciting. And Mark Rigsby, the animation lead. They were at Infinity Ward for the early days, Call of Duty 2 up to Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2. They then left and formed Respawn with those folks over there, Vince Zampella, Jason West. Then after Titanfall 2, they came back to Infinity Ward. And so it's this weird thing where while they were gone, Infinity Ward was bubbling, was churning, eventually hired Taylor and Jacob away from Naughty Dog, and they've kind of put a new spin on what Infinity Ward's take on Call of Duty campaigns are. And so it was the most interesting part of the trip was just seeing like these former Respawn developers coming back to Infinity Ward, and you definitely had the impression that they're like, holy God, like this studio is taking campaigns so much more seriously than we were. Like they obviously love Call of Duty 4's campaign, but they're like, look, that story was what it was. But like, hey, this is like you guys are doing like a real story this time around. Like what is going on here? You're going for emotions, deep emotions.
They showed us the Kleenex room, as they called it.
Yes.
That's they actually test the campaign with different people and they have them play it in there and they watch them to sort of see what kind of emotional response they have.
I've heard the Kleenex room mentioned in other studios, but the explanation that I always heard from other studios about why it's called a Kleenex room is because it's just a quick test, like a one and done, like a Kleenex blur nose,
Right.
move on, right? But they put a spin on it this time around.
It's
The
a nice
Kleenex
spin.
room. Yeah, Joel said the story made him cry. A lot of cryptic hints.
I
in
bet it's
that,
going to make me cry too.
Really?
I mean, I shed a tear at the end of Infinite Warfare's campaign. So.
That's wow, damn.
I knew I
Infinite
was-
Warfare was a very good
I knew I
campaign.
was being manipulated to do so. Okay,
Yeah.
but I still, it's like I said, I think that is one of the best Call of Duty campaigns I've ever played, and I'm really excited to see Jacob and Taylor sort of like go like hard on this one.
It seems like they really have the green light on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Taylor in particular, he said, "Hey, you should leave this game with a different worldview than you entered this game." But it's not political. But you can
And they
understand that.
kept saying they
Explain that on
wanted
the site.
to inspire empathy or like give players a sense of empathy, even if they're not really looking to get like a message from the game. Like even people who are just like, yeah, this game's fun, I want to go and shoot some stuff, but like they're kind of like trying to give players that sense of like, all right, I don't agree with this person, but I understand where they're coming
There's
from.
no
And-
such
and I
thing
think-
as good guys and bad guys.
And a game like this is in such a precarious position because on one hand, you have zany multiplayer action where it's just fun, right?
And
White
Tamagunchi.
phosphorus is a kill streak.
You get a Tamagunchi.
Yeah.
You're just shooting people, and it's out of that context. It's removed from the single player experience, which is much more heavy, and maybe you're thinking about what you're shooting at. You should be.
Yeah.
And these are very dissonant chords, and they're together in the same package, and it's a weird thing, and it's I would imagine almost impossible to sort of balance these things. These are two very different experiences, and one of them, in discussion, one of them is always going to get lumped in with the other. Like, can Call of Duty be taken? Are they taking these issues of war seriously while at the same time giving you a Tamagunchi to hatch and evolve and poop? Okay,
Well,
it's not going to poop. But
Do you think it's a little bit of that split of? I mean, this is oversimplification, but I'm saying it's an interesting split between the Respawn guys coming back to Infinite War, like, we want to kick some ass, here we go. Call of Duty multiplayer is awesome, let's go, let's give it our all, versus the Infinity Ward bubble that's been brewing up with the Naughty Dog developers. Where they want to take a more grounded approach.
I think it's a situation that Call of Duty's always had to deal with, but now it has to deal with it even more. Because,
Yeah, but now it's
because-
wanting to say something like important.
I mean, we don't know that for sure.
We don't know.
They're
Do-
trying to
we
say
do know that
something.
they're attempting to handle extremely sensitive and extreme topics with a deft hand.
It's the closest I've ever heard a cover story pitch come to our old cover story trip for Rainbow Six Patriots, which is strange. About
You wouldn't stop talking about that.
I think it's an interesting comparison overall. I think there's a lot of Rainbow Six in here.
Going back to like the dissonant chords that Tack was talking about, it reminds me of Spec Ops: The Line,
Yeah.
where it was like, all right, we're going to say something really, really heavy here, and it's like, oh, only 8 more headshots until you get this achievement.
But I still think Spec Ops is probably the best example of a video game handling that. Like,
Yeah, I think they did a good job.
It's a very good one so far. I mean, this one has some serious potential there. We'll see.
yeah, we'll definitely see. So, outside of the opening mission and stuff like that, you're going to be playing half the game as Kyle and the other half as Alex, who's a CIA operator who's going to be in the Middle East.
Roughly
working-
half. I'm sure there's some missions where you're going to be like.
Yes.
We saw a mission where you play as Child Farah. So.
Right, and that's about 3/4 of the way through the game. There's this character named Farah. You get to see where she comes from growing up, watching her father die along with...
And her mother.
Yes.
And oh my God, that's
By the way, that opening scene of that mission was gut wrenching.
the other mission. The townhouse against the terrorists is one thing. This mission is going to disturb people.
Because you're going to know Farah in the campaign. So
Yeah.
3/4 of the way through at this point, she's like, okay, she's strong and fearless, and she has a developed sense of what's right and wrong, is the way of describing her. And then you get to see where that all came from, where the Russians invaded her Middle Eastern
presented
town.
as a flashback.
Yeah.
And you play as her, so you actually have the agency of this child that can be killed
And it's
in many horrible ways.
Yeah, and it's a little bit like, Left Behind, to tie back to the Naughty Dog thing, or even a little bit like, the reboot of Tomb Raider, where it's like the big deal about young Farah getting her first kill and it being as brutal as possible, right?
It was not pleasant.
Not pleasant at
And
all.
also the things happening around her. Good Lord.
And they're very graphic. And again, like
a lot. It's if you are disturbed by both humans and animals and the sounds of them dying, it's a lot of gurgling
sights.
and writhing in pain as you're like this little girl crawling through this war zone.
Trying to survive, trying to escape, trying to get somewhere.
and at the same, I'm not condemning this. It's
Yeah?
it's an experience that you opt in for, and
That's
and I
true.
don't think everyone's gonna. Like I said, I don't think everyone's gonna be able to handle it.
Yeah, like if you're the normal like Call of Duty, I like to play multiplayer and hop in a party with my friends and shoot some people. And you're like, maybe I'll try campaign this year. Just expect a different experience from the multiplayer in this campaign.
I think there's going to be a certain percentage of the community that's going to try and play this like some old Call of Duty campaigns and be very frustrated with the amount of fail states and like just the speed of some of these things. Like, what I'm playing is like a little girl crawling through and making cell phone calls to distract people. Like, this is a weird Call of Duty rhythm.
Call of Duty campaigns, like say Advanced Warfare, they always get compared to like Michael Bay explosive movies.
Yeah.
I don't see that here. There's going to be a lot of like probably explosions, but not in the same way.
Yeah.
Not in a fun way.
It's not like hell yeah explosions.
Yeah, because I talked about how I remember on the Last of Us cover story how much Neil and Bruce back then said that they were inspired by No Country for Old Men. That was the tone they wanted for The Last of Us overall. And so because Taylor and Jacob worked on that, they said, oh yeah, this time around, not plot-wise, but tone-wise, Sicario is our North Star. Like that's the tone that we want for this game's campaign. But also some hints of American Sniper in there, stuff like that.
And I want to say, although the content was extremely graphic, extreme, and disturbing, I don't consider that to be necessarily a bad thing. The emotional response is a rare occasion for me in games. So when I get it, it doesn't have to be a happy one, right?
Yeah.
But to be able to use the medium to draw out emotion of people, I think is very skillful.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. But we'll see if that plays out, and we need to see the whole greater picture, right?
Right.
100%.
And I'm expecting you can be playing as Farah in other areas. Like we asked if this was the only time you play as Farah, and I think their exact answer was...
There's no way.
Well, their answer was, at that age, yes.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine one of these, if it's Alex or Kyle, is going to go down, and then you'll take a...
I would imagine.
Yeah. And I mean, we asked, like, do you play as modern day Farah, and they were like, we don't know yet, or like we're not saying,
because it's a Call of Duty from different perspectives. I think even though it's they put it in those broad 50-50 buckets, I'm pretty sure we're going to play as other characters too across the course of it.
Yeah, I think her brother's going to be a component. We don't exactly know how, but he's growing up as well.
I think the brother takes the different. Here's
so
my take on what we heard. We weren't not explicitly given this information, but my take is that Hadir kind of goes the other way. Instead of becoming the good guy, instead of becoming a moral compass. He decides to and justifies the means to get to take probably revenge against the people who killed his father.
Right, against the Russian invaders. Yeah, and is more of the insurgent type. I think that's likely where it's going to go, right?
Yeah.
Hey, anyways, interesting campaign.
Very.
I was struck by the tone of this cover story trip in general, and this is pretty inside baseball overall, but Call of Duty, one of the biggest series in the world. I've done 4 Call of Duty cover stories at this point? 5? I forget. But it's always like a pretty intense thing and a pretty structured thing. This was the most casual trip in general. I don't know if it's just a matter of faith. The franchise is so big. We've worked with Activision enough. But I was shocked just how the former Respawn crew in particular, it's like they were so loose, just referencing a ton of EA games, referencing other games left and right. Everything was cool, right? It felt so much more casual, and I don't know if that's
It felt more comfortable. I wouldn't say casual.
Okay.
They were letting their hair down a little bit, which is unusual.
It was really, really nice. And I don't know how much of that is just that crew coming back, having traversed the industry now and came back to Infinity Ward. But there's definitely an aspect like Joel, the studio art director. We interviewed him back on the cover story trip for Titanfall, and he was big on making the maquettes of the actual physical Titans, which was awesome to see. He still had those in his office now. It's in an Activision office, it's awesome to see all these Titanfall figures, but of course. And now he's taking that same approach, and he has a bunch of mannequin heads, and he's painting
it's really
them
cool.
paint.
It's fascinating to see that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, there's that guy's coat. I'm working on it. I went out into the field and tore some holes in it or something.
Beyond that,
speaking of which, the Ghillie Suit from All Ghillied Up in Modern Warfare 1, it's coming back.
It is literally
Modern Warfare 2019.
They literally went, because they had that in the basement somewhere, and they rescanned the original Ghillie Suit for a mission or for a texture overall for the new Modern Warfare.
I mean, there is almost zero chance that there's not a Ghillie mission at night.
Right.
And there's no way. Considering what we saw.
Even though they're not going for, as they put it, a greatest hits approach with the original Modern Warfare, I'm sure some things are going to be thematically tied in some way, right? Even parts about that mission in the townhouse remind me a little bit of the ship. Sequence for the
very
opening.
little,
but just tone wise, you're following them. They're on a mission. They're very tactical. They know exactly what they're doing. Right? It's at night, stuff like that. But it was so fun to see Joel. He just seemed to be jazzed about the budget, the technology, coming back to Infinity Ward. It's wait, what have you guys been doing? What can we do now? What is the tech we have here that I didn't quite have at Respawn? It's very fun to see this new wave of energy for those folks that left Also, it's fun to see. This is very insider as well. But just like the gaps in their knowledge, like we talk about, their philosophy towards cheating and multiplayer, or make some references to the last couple Call of Duty games. Then like the people who've been at Respawn are like, we're not as familiar with the last couple Call of Duty games as some other people in this studio. It's just fun to constantly dance around like, well, yeah, that reminded me of that last game that I worked on from another franchise, but Call of Duty this time. Like, they always had a fun way of expressing, like, the Titanfall era, which they love, and they like. Also, just they were openly talking about how brilliant they thought Apex Legends was.
Yeah, that's
like, they didn't
word that Joel actually used. Was I thought Apex was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, they didn't work on that, but it's like, we're amazed they pulled it off. It looks incredible. Let's see, other things stood out to you guys about the trip in general?
Well, there's a whole lot more information at GameInformer.com all month long.
That's true. Shea, what do we got coming up?
We've got a dive on the campaign tomorrow. Like I said, we'll have talks about multiplayer customization, and also a discussion with all those Respawn developers who came back to Infinity Ward about why they did it. And studio co-head Patrick Kelly sat in on the talk as well, and gave his perspective on how the team's coalescing and all that good stuff.
And you don't want to miss that one. That one is some good stuff.
Genuinely, and it's not like Shea knocked it out of the park question-wise. He did a good job.
Man,
I
cut that?
No, I'm just saying. It's genuinely one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever heard, though. Just like the topic, like that. I love Call of Duty development. I love being there and seeing Respawn early on, and just hearing them communicating about what it was like coming back to the studio at the idea of that classic Infinity Ward Respawn saga moving on, and this is the stage of the story at this point, is then some people come back to Infinity Ward. Like, they were so candid, and it was so fascinating to hear their take on what that actually feels like to leave a startup like Respawn.
And it's weird because, you have the guys who worked on Call of Duty, like old school Call of Duty, leave and go to Respawn. You have the Naughty Dog guys coming over to Infinity Ward.
Yeah.
And then you have Zeed, the studio director, who was old school Call of Duty, left to go to Respawn, then left Respawn to go to Naughty Dog, and then came back to Infinity Ward. So he's gone like all those different roads with all those guys.
Yeah, we cannot overstate how incestuous Southern California game development is. Everybody is everywhere. But it's also fun talking about, with them, just about that level of rivalry that they had with Naughty Dog back in the day. And like, it was like a mutual respect thing, but that has just carried forth. It's a fascinating saga. It turns out the development of Call of Duty games continues to be incredibly fascinating, Dan Tack.
And a massive undertaking.
It is.
There
I
it
agree.
is. GameInformer.com/Modern Warfare, everybody. That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.